off by welcoming you all and thanking you for choosing to attend this session, which is going to be a highlight, I'm sure, of the day today. I'm your room host, and I'm just going to say a couple words and then disappear. Although I will be monitoring the live stream. We're streaming this to the, hold on. Okay, that's a good reminder, a good example on live internet. Make sure that you mute your speakers on your laptop. Anyway, I'll be monitoring the live stream. We are streaming to the entire Canvas community, so we have a potential audience of 150,000 people to view this session. This is the Lowdown about the Online Education Initiative's course review. And from the OEI's perspective, we do have a course design rubric that we are having courses meet those standards before they're offered as part of the course exchange, which helps facilitate the achievement of degree completion by students at California's community colleges. And I'll go ahead and hand it off to our lead presenter, Helen Graves.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. It doesn't sound like it, but it's working? Okay, good. Excellent. So, okay, gotcha. So I am Helen Graves. I'm an instructional designer with @ONE and OEI. Hey, aloha. And what I want to do is start with a question. How many of you are familiar with either the course exchange or the OEI rubric? Excellent. Okay, good. So what we want to do today is kind of demystify the rubric and the process of course review for people, either individual instructors or people representing your college who may be, shall we say, a little hesitant to engage in the process because you're not quite sure what to expect. And so we don't have a lot of time, especially because I was a little tardy. And so very briefly, the course exchange is a collaboration among our entire system whereby a student can take an online course that has been approved for the exchange at a college other than their home college. So it'll help them with completion, with graduation programs, et cetera, and it will all be integrated into their regular home college transcripts, financial aid, all that stuff to make it simpler for them. Kate is going to briefly, so Kate's going to talk about just very briefly how a college can become part of the exchange, and then I will just minutely talk about the rubric, and then we want to get to the panelists who are going to share with you their instructors who've gone through the review process, had their courses looked at, and then gotten them done, and for the most part ready for, I think everybody's done, pretty sure. So they can tell you the lowdown of what it was like to actually be in the process, the good and the bad. So Kate, do you mind talking about the exchange?
Hi and welcome. I'm Kate Jordahl, and I am Director of Strategic Planning and Operations for the Online Education Initiative. My regular role is a photography professor at Foothill College, which is a story in itself not to be told now. But I also was in the first class of POCRs, or peer online course reviewers. So I feel very connected to this process and how important it is for our system, both the improvement in online learning, the improvement of the classes, the support for faculty. But my passion, excitement, thing that keeps me up at night right now is the course exchange. And we have 6 colleges live in the course exchange. We have a whole group of other colleges getting ready to go live in the course exchange. And this is a process by which a student anywhere in the state who's in a college that's part of the exchange will be able to find a class they need. So let's say they go and they sign up for their classes and they got 2 of the 4 or 3 classes they wanted. And they can't really they don't have full financial aid. Maybe it's not really worth their time to do 2 classes. They'll say, oh, I'll just drop out this quarter and come back next quarter. Like, maybe that will happen, right? So they already have their 2 classes at their home college. If they're eligible by being a California resident and having done all of their preparation, their SSSPs, they can go into the course exchange and get a 3rd class, or up to 2 classes they can get. Now, they're going to automatically combine their financial aid. They won't have to drop out, and they'll be able to move on in their education. The home college doesn't lose the enrollment and gets the completion for that student getting their degree. The teaching college gets credit for the class that student took. It is a win-win-win for the students and for the schools. But here we're really to talk about the win for the faculty. and that is that every class in the course exchange is given the support of the rubric and the course review process, by which they get to meet with a course designer and they get to get accessibility assistance. So this is just a huge difference. And any of you, I made my first online class, I could count it in decades rather than in years, right? I can tell you, I was there. I can remember being there, photographing things out of books and trying to create web pages on my own. And you know, that where we've come is so much more. And you know, guessing how are students going to learn online? I never learned online, right? All my classes were live classes. There weren't that many people doing it. So I'm really excited about the community we're building, where we don't have to develop everything, we can work together. So the course exchange is the center of this. The course review process that everyone here will talk about is going to really be the heart of making the course exchange so important. We've already seen the numbers move in terms of success, as Jory was sharing earlier today. So thank you I'm so glad to be here.
Thanks. So the courses that go through the review process are looked at using the OEI rubric, which a lot of you indicated you were familiar with. It's got the 5 sections. It's not an evaluation, and I want to stress that. It is a review, basically looking at the structure and the organization and the usability of the course. So it's not somebody coming in and saying, you should be teaching this topic, or you should, whatever. It's looking at how the students are accessing the information and are the appropriate pedagogical elements included. Everything in the rubric supports what we know supports students in persisting and succeeding in their online courses. So it's not just pulled out of thin air. And so what I want to do is introduce our panelists and then give them a chance to talk to you about what their experience was like. And then I intend to have some time for questions as well. So we've got over here, well, why don't you, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. That's probably easy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Xochitl Tirado from Imperial Valley College.
Thank you.
I'm Shannon Van Zant from Columbia College.
I'm Jacqlyn Vetter. I teach for the community colleges in the Bay Area.
I'm Kyle Livie from Ohlone College.
I'm Mark Bauermeister from Foothill College, and I also teach over at Ohlone College and Merritt College.
So the first question, and if you want to just, oh, I got to talk into that. Okay. So the first question I would like everyone to have a chance to address is, what were your goals for participating in the course review? What prompted you to sign up for this torture that, to sign up for this experience?
So to be completely honest, I signed up, we signed up with OEI, my college did, right from the beginning. And I signed up because I was the instructor with least seniority in my department, and I wanted to teach online. I was already teaching online, and I thought, if I join this, then maybe I'll get a class for sure. That's why I did it. And then here I am, years later.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So a very similar reason here. My college was one of the pilot colleges. And so my department, I'm a history instructor, my department was a little resistant to online education, and so the college was talking about possibly bringing in somebody from the outside of the college to do it, just because we were in the pilot program, and I said, that's kind of my job. I would like it, so I volunteered to sort of be the guinea pig for my department and for our college to sort of see how this works.
So I started out with Ohlone College, and I was approached by my dean to see if I would pilot NetTutor. So we're also one of the colleges that was piloting at that time. And I attended a couple OEI meetings and drank the Kool-Aid and liked what I saw and the impact that it could make on students. And as an adjunct instructor who's roaming around the state of California, this also makes me a different, employable or options that I might have as an instructor.
I don't know if I drank the Kool-Aid yet or not. I think one of the things that really inspired us, I'm also in history, and there are 3 of us who are tenure-line full-time faculty. We teach a lot of online courses, and I think we wanted to at least have 1 or 2 of us go through the process to both kind of help us better understand how we can serve our students, but also to kind of evaluate our courses and to figure out how are we best serving students, even courses that are not exchange ready. And I think we also definitely wanted to get our courses on the exchange, and that's something that can support the college in terms of enrollment and reaching, a wider range of student and, increasing the diversity of our classrooms. So.
For me, I also kind of fell into it. My dean at Foothill College approached me one day and asked me if I would like to do it, and so I figured, okay, why not? And as an adjunct, this would also expand my opportunities, perhaps. But also, I see I've taken some online courses in grad school as well, and I thought they were very convenient because I was doing a lot of my classes outside of the state of Iowa, where I was going to grad school, and I thought, how nice would that be to increase the opportunity for other students to, not only in California, but across the country, to take online courses and just make it, to simplify education as much as possible. And I kind of wanted to be a part of that, and so.
So the next question I'm curious about is, what was the experience like going through the review process? And really, what was the good and the bad, if there was any bad? So who would like to start? Okay.
Sure. So yeah, with everything, there are pros and cons. The pro being that, well, maybe I should start with the cons. It'll make more sense that way. So the review process for me took a little longer than I anticipated, which was fine in the end, as I'll get to. But one of the things that I had problems with personally was that there tended to be miscommunication between myself and the reviewers, and I attributed this to just because it's become a new process for everyone. So I would have multiple reviewers looking at the same course, and they would have their own take on how the course should be updated, and then I would update it, and then another reviewer would look at it, and then they'd want to update it this certain way. So it took a long time. Finally, we got on the same page, and we were able to get the course where it was exchange ready. Now, the pro of that was that I had all these great ideas about how to update the course, and so I had all these innovative ideas that could help my students. So I think the con worked really well with the pro in that sense.
I would say the first pro is Helen, and she is a pro. I think that the support I got from Helen, and actually also from the accessibility experts who were working on sort of fine-tuning and finding areas to make my course more accessible, that was definitely the best part of the process. I felt like it was really thoughtful. There was a deep understanding of what was happening in the course. And in terms of accessibility, I think about this not just for, full-time faculty, but especially for adjuncts who do not have the training time. They're not compensated for doing that kind of work in an online course. And so to have someone who has that expertise and is also helping to teach you how to better make your course accessible, I think that was really helpful. It was sort of like accessibility boot camp for my class. And because I teach in history and I do a lot of stuff with archives that are online, I have students going and learning about the discipline and how the discipline is practiced, certainly outside the context of a classroom. There was lots of challenges and lots of questions that needed to be dealt with and asked, and I thought that was actually a really great part of the process. I guess in terms of cons, I think that part of the process, the review process, is as in any rubric, there's an inherent subjectivity, and I think that part of the rubric as it is framed now, we don't have to write the essays. Yes, we didn't have to do all this extra work, but actually doing that kind of reflective work would have been helpful to be able to flesh out a deeper understanding of the rubric. I think that in the actual review meeting, where you're at that stage of the review process where your course has been reviewed and you're going over it, it was clear that there were some misunderstandings in terms of pedagogy and the part of like how the course was reviewed in terms of course content and disciplinary area. And the rubric is, again, not evaluating how the discipline teaches the class, but in a way it kind of does. And so I think that there are places there where I felt like, oh, that could have been a little bit more fleshed out, and maybe that was on my end, and it also could have also been on the review side as well. So I think that was where there were some, some pitfalls. It's been actually a very speedy process for me. I don't know, Helen, if you would agree. I felt like it's gone very fast. I started in the second half of spring, and I'm done. So, yes, very happy about that.
I was just trying to think if I can think of a con. So my process also went very quickly. I submitted my course for review at the beginning of April, and I was approved mid-July. And part of that, I think, has to do with part that I took the @ONE class, the Online Education Standards and Practice class, and really used the rubric as my guideline and my second hand, third hand, to be able to make those corrections beforehand, which made the process made it very quick. The meetings I had with an instructional designer was amazing. She's not going to get rid of me now, and we've talked about that. Our relationship will be ongoing, just not paid. And that experience has been really just, if anything, to go through the review process is to get that support that you may not get out of college, which I had not experienced. And so it really kind of opened my eyes to a different way of looking at things and making sure that I'm being more thoughtful in my universal design, for example, in the way that I approach teaching and how do I reach students.
When I started the process, for me, the most intimidating part, this was a very intimidating process for me, I have to admit, was in fact the accessibility, universal design aspects. I was kind of in the dark about the whole thing, and that ends up actually being the best part of this process for me. I learned so much. I have a course that is easy to navigate. I taught it this summer, actually, and the feedback from students was amazing. They love it. And so despite that initial trepidation, and the time, that would be the con, the time that I sort of put in with the assistance of others to make it that way, and to see it impact students the way that it has been really refreshing.
I'll take it for a second because I think it's important. As you go out and hear about the course review process, there was an original process that probably sounds like what Mark started with, where it was put through reviewers and then you would the faculty member would try to fix it, and then it was put through different reviewers, which may have a totally different take. And so that's been really streamlined. So when you think of course review, you need to think of what's going on now, and Helen can share a little bit more about, but now it's very streamlined that there's one set of reviews and then there's just this working directly with the course designer and the accessibility designer. I think that's been such an incredible improvement. As a class reviewer, for me, it made me feel like the work I was doing was being really used to improve the class directly at that point when that change happened.
So, being part of the pilot, of the OEI pilot, my course was reviewed more than once. The first review, that was tough. We were getting all kinds of different feedback. Do this, we do it. No, don't do it. Change it back. So it was a bit frustrating in the beginning, but this is a pilot. So the great news about this is that now the review process has been streamlined. I went through the new review process, and that was so much better. The feedback was very consistent, and they give you, you receive your feedback, and it's not like, oh, here you go, good luck, fix it. You have somebody assigned to you. I worked with Helen, and we met more than once, made a list of things that I had to improve in my course. She helped me improve something. I'd be like, okay, I'll do it. And she would tell me, no, what do you want me to do? I'll do this for you. I'll do A, B, and C. You do D, E, and F. So it was really nice to have that support. Not just support, but she actually did stuff for me in my course. So the new process is so much easier. After Helen, I did have an accessibility expert assigned to me because there were some documents that I didn't know how to make accessible. So basically, they took those documents and they just sent them back to me. And they said, okay, Xochitl, your documents are here. They are not now accessible. So your course is good to go. So just having the support of Helen and the accessibility expert, and now knowing that my course, after all these years of work, is finally ready, it's such a great feeling, and I feel so much more confident as an online instructor. So it's very rewarding. It's a very rewarding process, and I'm the DE coordinator for my college now. I encourage all of my online instructors to go through the process because it makes your course so much better.
So the new streamlined process involves the course being looked at by 2 peer reviewers and an accessibility reviewer. And then all 3 of those, and they do it, I'm going to hold it up, but it's not really a rubric, but they go through the rubric, each item, all of them, checking off whether they think that has been met or it needs some work, and then giving any specific feedback. And then there's a lead reviewer who compiles all of those 3 documents into one document that is then sent back to you, the instructor. So you don't get 3 sets of feedback that could be like Mark's experience, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Mark, where it's maybe conflicting information. You get one document that has been assembled so that all you're getting is the one set of feedback. And then after you get the feedback, you are then assigned an instructional designer who supports you in moving anything that was marked as incomplete over into the aligned or even exemplary column. So you're, as I think Xochitl was the one who said, we don't just give you the feedback and then say, okay, or maybe it was Shannon, go off and do it. We're really wanting to help you make that happen. So the next question I would like to have you all answer is, how did this process impact your course? And some of you have spoken to that a little bit already, but maybe if you have any specific examples of the impact that going through the review had for your course.
One of the important parts of teaching online, I never meet my students face-to-face. We have no face-to-face meetings. So having that first initial course orientation type of module, that's really important in an online class, as most of you may know. Just that component itself, the way I was able to improve it with the review process and Helen's help and, just being part of OEI, that part, I feel so much more confident. I do feel that we just moved into Canvas. This is our first official semester as an only Canvas college. We were Blackboard and Canvas. My students that started class today, I feel confident that they will be able to navigate my course without, having too much pressure on them, too much stress. They're going to learn the content that I want to teach, not let's learn how to use Canvas.
I think for me, having those extra eyes to look at the navigational things, so things I thought were easy to navigate, and then they'd be like, well, I don't really understand how you get from here. That extra set of eyes, because when you do this and you look at your course so many times, you know what you want to do with it. And so it was so nice, and the feedback was very positive, and it came with suggestions, not telling you what to do, but things like, oh, you should try this or this, and then when you meet with your reviewer, you can say, I'm not sure about that, and then they'd have other ideas. So they weren't dictating to you how it should look, but giving you lots of suggestions. I don't think as instructors we see what other people do enough, so having that in the course has made it very easy to navigate.
There was a couple of things that we used to make my course better. One of the things is really leveraging the LMS system. I was doing so much on my own where I could have been using the wiki pages for better access for the students, like tables. So pulling everything out of a PDF. So actually in my course, you will not see one single PDF because it's accessibility issues. The other thing too is making my discussions a lot more exciting. You know, in Canvas, the discussion forums can get quite long sometimes if you have a group of 30 students, and so trying to make them more engaging with like videos, for example. It is true that students will engage with a video more so than a long page of text. So there's a lot of little neat tricks like that that I wouldn't have ordinarily have made changes on my own, but having another set of eyes look at it and say, make suggestions. It was never, you must do this. It was, what do you think about? And then, of course, that makes it better. So it was very helpful.
Yeah, I think the process, I mean, just sort of playing off what Shannon and Jackie just mentioned, I mean, I think the process really helped me in thinking about how my students see the class and thinking about, I mean, there weren't a lot of major changes, but like little tweaks, like within a module, moving a piece up or down actually has a huge impact on how students perceive the course of the work in that given module. And so that was actually really helpful. I think one of the challenges I had was, and this is more of an accessibility piece than in terms of course evaluation, is that I used a lot in this course, used a lot of different like university sites that had been put together maybe with like a small grant back in like the late 90s or early aughts, where there is not money to revise that site. And so, you know, if they're working with, you know, documents or archival materials there, if it wasn't accessible, having to find somewhere else. And, you know, again, not being able to necessarily do that kind of accessibility testing on my own, and how accessibility standards have changed means it sort of, you know, keeps you on your game, right? And so that was actually really helpful.
So in the review process, one of the great things, as I mentioned, was all the innovative ideas that accumulated over that time. I do feel that students are responding to the visualization, as others mentioned, the chunking up of pages and adding videos and other things like that that can capture students' imagination and engage them more into the course. And also, one of the things that I felt is very helpful was about midway through the course, the idea of giving the student a little bit more power, asking them, for example, what is muddy and what is clear? Does anybody else use that here, muddy, clear? Yeah, I thought that was really helpful. So based on the content that they've you know, been going through so far, what is muddy, so what don't they get, and what's clear, what is very clear? And this gives a little more interaction with the student and the class as a whole, helps me as an instructor understand, you know, which way I need to go, and also which areas I need to repeat, perhaps. And overall, just I've noticed since the end of this, since now that the course is exchange ready, I've implemented a lot of the design ideas into my other courses, for example, at Merritt College. And both at Merritt and at Foothill, the attrition rate has gone down. So I feel that this has been very helpful on a number of fronts.
So the next thing I want to ask is, what do you wish you had known before you went into the review process? What advice would you have for an instructor who is considering going through the review process?
Oh, well, it does take a lot of time, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case now, since it has been streamlined much more. So having one person working with you and doing a lot of the work as well, volunteering their time to do it to help you out, is very helpful. So I think for people getting into it now, there's much more confidence. Perhaps at least you could have more confidence knowing that. To prepare yourself, I guess just whatever questions you have about the improvement of your course, preparing for the reviewer, be very open. If you have a question, ask it, and don't leave it on the table, or leave it on the back burner, I should say. Make sure everything's very transparent, and it's going to help with the review process, and it'll speed it up much more, I think.
I think going into it, and if someone, like we actually have someone in my department who's going to go through this process soon, I think first step is to do some reflection with the rubric and go through, you don't have to write these reflections anymore as part of the review process, but actually, in retrospect, that would have helped, I think, in terms of thinking about what the rubric is and how it's formed. And I also think finding someone on your campus or finding a colleague in another campus who's gone through the process would be really helpful. The rubric is framed in a way which is pretty broad, and so you can, like, from my perspective, oh yeah, no problem, check when you do the self-review. But depending on how the team of reviewers interprets that rubric and how they use it can really vary. And so having someone who's been through the process and has gotten that detailed feedback and evaluation of each of the components of the course, I think would be really helpful. And I think the other thing, too, is to understand that, and this was brought up earlier as well, that the people who are reviewing your course are not discipline area experts, and they're not going to be necessarily, able to, they're not going to be critiquing aspects of the work that's done in your specific discipline, but they also may not understand all of it because that's not their area of expertise. And so really it is, as Mark mentioned, a dialogue that has to happen during the review process where I think, and Helen can speak to this as well too, like explaining, oh, this is why this is done in this discipline actually helps a lot. And I think it might even help in the process of refining how the rubric is interpreted for certain kinds of courses.
So I think just to echo what's being said is this is not an evaluation. It really truly is a review and to improve a course. But then also do as much legwork beforehand as you can with the rubric, kind of go through a self-reflective process before actually submitting your course. But then know that if there's something that you don't know how to do or it's not going to be exemplary on the rubric when you submit your course, you're going to get it there because you have instructional designers and the accessibility whizzes that will help you with it. So you really get the support that you need.
So I might be a little different here. And the OEI reviewers might, kick me for this. I wish I would have spent less time trying to make it accessible myself because the support that I got through accessibility, I spent so much time trying to make it accessible. And to be honest, they're just the experts. I just didn't know. I mean, I knew enough to, make my pictures have captions and that kind of stuff. But I spent a whole lot of time doing that before I submitted it, and I wish that I hadn't, because the support that I got for that aspect of it, not changing the subject matter, just making it accessible, was immense. So if I were to do it again, I would not spend all of that time doing that and just kind of have the content laid out the way I wanted it and kind of do those first couple, I don't know what the letters are on the rubric, and sort of leave accessibility to sort of the collaboration and people who knew what they were doing.
A little bit like cleaning the house before the maid comes. Don't do it. Let the accessibility people come in and they'll clean it up.
Yeah, I agree with Shannon. I was going to kind of go off on the same note, and I was worried for saying this, but yeah, it's okay if you don't know everything that's on that rubric. I mean, you are going to do a self-check, which is really helpful because there's simple things in there that I don't have that, and you can just put it in very easily. And there's other things where you're just like, I don't know what that is, and being worried about figuring it out and trying to decipher it on your own, you don't have to do that because you're going to get the support you need. So I do agree. I mean, you want to have your course, pretty much laid out, but, you don't want to spend too much time doing something and then just, when they tell you a totally different way, that's so much easier. So.
We have never had a course submitted for review yet that has been totally aligned. So we expect that there are going to be things in your course that are not aligned already. So I always reiterate to people, don't worry, don't stay up late at night trying to make your course fully aligned before you submit it. We expect that it won't be. So I wanted to leave time for questions, but let me just check with everybody on the panel. Is there anything you haven't had a chance to say that you want to say? Maybe a question a prompt I didn't. Okay. So what questions do you have? And should we, Greg, take the mic around, or what will be the best way to do this?
I think it would be best if you just repeat the question.
Okay. Yes.
Question if each of the panelists could answer the software you use to record your videos and then the software you use to close caption.
Okay, so the question is, what platforms are you using for captioning and for embedding videos or creating videos? Okay.
So I use screencastomatic because it's just easy. I'm the DE coordinator, but I don't consider myself like a techie person. I can learn fast, but screencastomatic, and I caption myself YouTube.
And you can use screencastomatic to caption.
Yeah, I'm not there yet.
So same screencastomatic, but I do upload them to 3C Media Solutions. The turnaround time is great, and they have both embed links and regular links that you can link to.
Same. Camtasia was recommended a few years ago for me, and it was so overwhelming that I gave up and recently purchased, I think, Screencast-O-Matic for the full version of like $10 for the year or something ridiculous. It's definitely affordable to make my life a little bit easier, so that's as well.
Screencast-O-Matic. I'm sorry, I wish I had something better. I think that's just the easiest. It's a pretty basic platform. I mean, it's not super exciting. I have a lot of background in teaching and working with different video editing platforms, but in the reality is what you're doing in a lot of cases is very direct and basic, and so that has worked really well for me. For captioning, our campus is piloting using revcom, and we found that the captions that are produced automatically by sites like YouTube have a lot of inaccuracies, especially in certain disciplines where you're using vocabulary and jargon. It's not an ideal, and we have a huge deaf student population at Ohlone, and so there's a real concern. So we have been using revcom, and it's expensive. It's $1 a minute, but it's amazing. It's so good, and the captions are uploaded directly into YouTube. It could not be easier. The campus is paying for it with this pilot, so I use it a lot. Yeah, it's great.
For me, I use my own camera, my own software on my computer for captioning. We have some great folks at Foothill that do the captioning for us, and of course there's a spot on campus where we can also go and record entire lectures. I can't tell you the exact name of the technology though. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
No,
Don't do it. There's no need.
What other questions are there? Yes.
So are there some courses that have been submitted that are just like the person was so totally clueless, the course is so totally bad, that you just said, you got to go back, and it's not even like, in other words, you didn't take it for fixing it.
So,
or does everything sort of...
So the question is, has there been a course so bad that we sent it back? And no, no one is rejected. There are the three categories: incomplete, aligned, and exemplary. And so some people have more incompletes than others, but nobody so far has been fully incomplete. And so we work with, we want your course to be exchange ready, and so we want to help you get it exchange ready, starting at whatever point you're at. Yes?
So my class currently is not, and probably never will be, have a CID member. So at some point I'm hoping that the OEI will invite courses that are not CID listed currently. But I'm wondering what the resources are, because it sounds like a tremendous amount of resources are going to producing these classes or getting them aligned. What's the timeline, and do you think those resources will be available with an instructional designer and all that in like 5 years' time?
You probably have a better answer than I. If you don't mind repeating the question.
So the question had to do, and some of you may know this, that, and I have it up here on the board, that courses have to be at this time CID designated, be part of an ADT, GE transfer pattern, or CTE pathway, and the other things that it says here. And that's for the first iteration of course exchange, and it is come down to it, what can we agree on? So I mean, since these classes, CID classes, have been agreed to transfer to Cal State Hayward, we can agree to transfer them between ourselves, right? I mean, that seems that's and it's a stretch actually, but it's not as big a stretch as it might be. Our hope in the next versions of Course Exchange will be to have more options, and so to identify a pathway by which non-CID classes can be agreed upon between colleges, and that those classes will show up for students from each of those colleges. To also allow smaller consortiums between consortium colleges, so maybe not all the colleges, but there may be a group of colleges that teach something special that need to exchange classes, so they could agree to do that exchange. So at that point, these processes will be extended beyond that first list. But we've gone on the list. At first, there was a very short list of classes that were allowed to be in the exchange. It now has been expanded to anything with CID and as part of a degree. So I think it's going to be a couple years. The crystal ball that I keep on my desk does not tell me things about state funding. I've asked it many times. It's a little bit like the 8-ball. Ask again later, right? But I do think that with a number of students that are going through online and the number of students who need this support, the ongoing support for quality online classes can only continue. And that's an opinion, not a fact, but I know. So where it will be when we start doing these other exchanges, I do know that there'll be dedicated people like Helen still there trying to make the classes better and working with us. So that'll be good, because my class isn't CID either.
Did I see another hand earlier? Okay, you and then you. Go ahead.
Will you have enough instructional designers hired to handle theoretically, the number of courses being submitted?
If you build it, we will be hired. The question was, will there be enough instructional designers to handle the volume of classes we anticipate if we get everybody submitting? Yes?
What is the length of time that we should expect, maybe a mean with the standard deviation to the left and right?
Right.
Of what to look for?
Yeah.
Examples.
The question is, what length of time should one anticipate being in the review process before getting fully exchange ready? Without sounding like I'm putting you off, it really depends on how many incomplete versus where the status of your course is at the end of the review process. And it depends also on the instructor's schedule and how much time they're able to devote. I've had some instructors be done. Their course had, maybe 3 incomplete things and a couple of accessibility things, and they were done in a month. I've had one gentleman I've been working with since February, but he keeps canceling a point. So it just really depends on the state of your course and your ability to devote some time to the review. So I don't know if one of you wants to answer that as well.
I just finished, so let's say. Yeah, it was fast. I actually was like taken aback. Yeah. Helen was on me the whole time. No, it was very quick, and I was surprised at how quick it was, even from that initial review meeting. I was like, oh, and then we're done. Like it really can go very, very quickly. It really does mean that the instructor has to be able to pay attention and give time to it in the short term, like right in that moment. I think if I had pushed it out, like if I had told Helen when we were wrapping this up in May, like it was finals for me and everything was happening, right? If I had said, let's just wait until August, it would have been so much harder to go back through that material. So I think that's a recommendation, is just to keep pushing through it. But it was a very quick process. And I know that's different than the earlier iterations of this, but very fast. And it's funny because I was thinking, oh, I'm going to do another course. Like go through this process, because it's not actually that bad.
Great. So I think we have 30 seconds left. Is there a quick question? Yes.
How are you reviewing content that is kind of like behind the LTI authentication door? So something that is not
Third party, essentially. Yeah. So how are we reviewing third party content, which could be publisher or could be an LTI? We aren't, actually. And so early on, there were attempts to try to get access and then at least give the instructor feedback about that. And it has just recently been decided that it's really beyond our purview. And so we will make note that there is this content that needs to be looked at in terms of accessibility, but we're not able to do that. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, panelists, for taking the time. I really appreciate your presence, and hopefully we'll see you in the review process.